This is your Covenant News Network, a special report highlighting the work of Pastor William T. Young IV in teaching on the decolonization of Palestine through a biblical lens. Pastor Young has instructed in Bible study, spoken on panels, and further facilitated at conferences. How to read the Bible in light of the reality of the ongoing tragedy in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. His passion and leadership to ensure we remain a church on the front line for social justice and equality for all God's children brings us to this moment together. Hello, I am Kendall Wilson, host of Covenant News Network. Thank you to all who are listening and are tuning in to the Covenant News Network, where we're not just reporting church announcements, but with the partnership of our nonprofit, Covenant Full Potential Development Center, we're sharing and elevating the experiences of the most vulnerable and marginalized in order to remain the people of faith in our community who are on the front line for justice and equality. So I'm excited in my role as the executive director of Covenant Full Potential Development Center to have had the pleasure of meeting a young man who volunteered with our food bank and our community garden last year. I'm just proud to have him speak and be with us today. And I would love to go into introducing him, but I'll tell you this, he can introduce himself far better. So Peter, please go ahead and greet the people.
Hello, how you all doing? First and foremost, I just wanted to say, it was a pleasure getting to collaborate with you guys last year. And I'm also thankful because I was in the midst of a thesis project for grad school, and you guys at Covenant really got it done for me and helped me basically to graduate. And so I appreciate that. But to get into the business of today, my name is Peter Afriyie, and I'm a lot of things, but I think first and foremost, I'm a creative. I'm a photographer, visual storyteller, and I currently work as a staff photographer. Well, technically, I'm an intern, but staff photographer at the Associated Press, and I've gotten to, in that capacity, work on many different remarkable stories and get access to many different places. One of which I am going to speak on with you guys today.
Thanks so much, Peter. And I know for us personally, we relied on your photography skills. And so I want to make sure that we don't miss an opportunity for you to not just speak about the story, which you've captured beautifully through your photography, but just even make sure we dive into your passion around social justice also. So if you would just can you speak to how photography, generally speaking, has played an important role in your work now of news reporting with the Associated Press and just your personal passion for social justice?
Okay, so I mean, as far as what I'm doing currently, photography is my work. It's not even like a part of it. I go out and I capture stories and document events using photography, and this has been something that I've been into not only as a job but as a hobby for I would say the past 10 years. And ever since I got my first camera and I went outside and was just taking pictures of whatever. I was intrigued by the format, but then also I found that I could intersect it with other things I'm passionate about, like for example, social justice, like you mentioned before, and I was really drawn to the events of 2020, more specifically protests around the death of George Floyd and several other Black people. And I went out there and I was documenting those events and protests with my camera. And it eventually led me to come down to DC and document the march, I think it was the Commitment March, led by National Action Network and Reverend Al Sharpton. And that kind of set the chain in motion for me to start to pursue photojournalism professionally. And so after that summer, after a couple months of thinking, I decided to enroll in a master's program at GW. And, I completed it. And right out the gate, got my first opportunity at AP. And, here we are. And now I get to do what I am passionate about for a living. Like there's no better feeling.
Here we are, and you caught my attention as I was doing some reading. You've recently captured the impact of Israel's war on Gaza. And so you've done so quite eloquently, based on the experience of a 4-year-old young boy from Gaza. Would you share how being connected and confronted with his personal trauma in such an up close way influenced how you went about capturing the photos that are available and that will be shared with our viewers?
When I got the call that I would be assigned a story on this young boy from Gaza, immediately piqued my interest because I am an avid consumer of media and the news, and I know what's going on out there. And a lot of times people tend to, formulate opinions on things, like in my experience, without taking the time to figure out, the breadth of it and what it is. And so I saw this as an opportunity because I've been seeing this myself, amongst, some of the people that I interact with, this kind of mindset. They are viewers of the things that I create. And so I wanted to use this as an opportunity to perhaps in my own way, educate them about, what's going on. And so the story is, well, let me back up for a second. So Israel is at war with Palestine, or, they call it the Gazan territories, or I don't know the technical nomenclature for it, but, they're at war in Gaza, and it's in response to an attack that this group called Hamas perpetrated on Israel back in October of last year. And, ever since then, the entirety of the Gaza Strip has been being bombarded, and soldiers have come in, and, there has been a lot of casualties, both on, within the Hamas group and among the Gazan citizens, primarily heavily on that side. There's a lot of innocent people and civilians who have unfortunately been killed as a result of this conflict. And but death isn't the only way that conflict could take its toll. And so in addition to those people who have died, there have been countless more who have been injured, sometimes like irreparably. And one of these individuals was this young boy named Omar Abu Kuwait, and he is 4 years old. And initially, he was in his own home, and he has some relatives in the home next door. And Israel, like I mentioned before, is bombarding Gaza. And so they, I guess, got word of an impending strike, and they were able to evacuate their home before it got hit and collapsed. And they ended up having to move in with Omar's grandparents. And sometime shortly after that, their house was also struck, but unfortunately, the family could not all evacuate in time, and the house collapsed, and this young boy Omar was trapped under the rubble, and he managed to survive, but not without losing his arm and sustaining very severe injuries to his face and his leg. And in addition to that, he lost his sister, he lost his parents, he lost his grandparents, and he lost 2 aunts and a cousin that I'm aware of. There could be more. And, while in recovery, he was identified by this group, 2 different charities. One of them was called Rama Worldwide, that's RAHMA. And the second one is the Global Medical Relief Fund, which is based where I am here in New York. And they were able to, the leader of that group, her name is Alyssa Montanti. And she just has a heart for helping, kids around the world who may not have access to medical treatment, and, getting them high quality services here in the States. And so she partners with all these organizations to offer care free of charge for them up until they turn 21. And she's helped, many different individuals from many different countries over the years. And so she got word that there was this young boy in Gaza in need. And so they facilitated connections to get him to the United States. They partnered up with Rama Worldwide and the Customs and Border Patrol and got him here, and he was able to get that medical treatment and get a new prosthetic arm. And so he's now back in the Middle East. I think they're staying in Egypt because, you know, they don't really have a home to go back to. But at least they were able to provide some measure of, you know, restoration or begin the healing process for this boy. I'm sure it'll take far, far longer as the war is still going on as well.
And given that the war is still going on and what you've described is a very traumatic experience for such a young person, in the pictures that you've captured, these photographs, is there a message of hope to be conveyed as we look at these pictures?
A message of hope, I am not sure, is conveyed in these pictures because, you know, as I mentioned, the war is still going on and we don't know what the outcome will be. A lot of people are hoping for a ceasefire, but that doesn't seem to be impending. And also, you know, Israel continues to attack Gaza. And so we don't really know what's going to happen. So as far as hope, I'm not sure. But I would say that this is a message of the human cost of war. You know, a lot of times people look at it from the top level, big picture. Countries are in conflict because one wants something from the other. But then down at the human level, there, which I feel is more important, you know, there are so many other things. Like I said, this boy lost his entire immediate family, you know, save his aunt and uncle and, you know, a few other relatives. And so when you look at it that way, it honestly makes you question whether any war is worth it, because I believe that every human life is valuable, and people shouldn't die, you know, for reasons like this.
Thank you for dispelling what I would say would be a misconception of these photographs conveying hope. I believe it's easy to remove ourselves from what doesn't affect us up close, particularly here in the United States. And so you can see these pictures, and of course, we see a need being met. But we know that the experience of this young boy, the war, the story, it doesn't end. And so to that point, will these pictures in some way you think continue to educate, to inform, or maybe even hook people into being more concerned about what's happening in Gaza, particularly with young people and the effect on them as innocent bystanders?
I would say yes. And one interesting tidbit that I picked up, you know, in over the months that this war has been going on is that a large percentage of the population of Gaza is under the age of 18. And, you know, the older people, you know, they're being killed, and the infrastructure and the buildings and a lot of the other things that are over there are being laid waste to. And so it brings up the question, like, you know, what future do these guys have? I mean, not guys, but these people, they're children, you know, for the most part. And, you know, they will have to grow up in an environment and possibly have to contribute to rebuilding it after all of this is over. And as far as my photos, I hope that they could serve as a message of, you know, like I mentioned before, the human aspect of what's going on. People think about money, people think about resources, people think about, you know, access to other things. And I don't believe that it's as important as the human beings themselves and their experiences and, you know, what they have to go through and what they're being forced to go through due to this conflict. I'm sorry, did that answer your question?
It has, and you even furthermore had me thinking about just the power of storytelling, journalism, media, photography, and the integrity needed also in that type of reporting. Sometimes that's the only source of information or learning, or maybe even some unlearning that's happening for people. And with that being said, you're teaching. You're teaching through what you have gathered with your lens. And I hope that it is widening the lens of some people's thoughts about what is happening. So is there a call to action for us regarding that injustice is happening to innocent people? So how can we from afar be involved and not just ignore? What's the call to action?
I think that first and foremost, the best way to be involved is to be informed. You know, we're in the age of information, access to everything at our fingertips, but the danger and the caveat of that is that we're also in the age of misinformation. And, you know, I'm not trying to throw any shade on any people in any rooms, if you catch my drift, but not every place online is a good or accurate source of news. And so I, you know, by my words, I want to implore people to make sure that they're seeking out the right sources of information, make sure that they're vetted, make sure that they're trustworthy, and you know, also learn how to critically think and scrutinize where they're getting their information from, because not everything you read is true. And people have been saying this for a very long time, mostly due to paranoia, but it's actually true. Don't believe everything you read. Not every source is a good one. And so if people learn to think and scrutinize and make sure that they're getting the information also from multiple places and corroborating that and making sure that it's accurate, you know, and you keep hearing and seeing the same things, that you can become better informed and educated, and then you can use that as a platform to then, you know, if you choose to get further involved, whether that's through, you know, donation of money or charities or anything. Because like I mentioned before, there's a lot of misinformation going on out there. And so the first step is to make sure that you're informed.
Thank you, Peter. And this is a step for ensuring those that are connected with Covenant Baptist United Church of Christ and Covenant Full Potential Development Center get this message from, yes, I think a very credible source. So I'm glad that you took time to speak with me, to share with those that will view this. We want to stay connected. Unsure of what's coming next for you, but definitely know we'll be keeping an eye out, especially if there's any more to come in terms of your photography on what's happening in Gaza. So I thank you so much.
And thank you. And I hope to continue to, you know, be granted these opportunities to tell these stories in the future. And thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Peter.